Guys, I am ThatBluesyGuy. I am a member of reddit.com/r/guitar, and I also teach some private guitar lessons, both in person and online. Hit me up right there at that email in the center if you need to have any questions, you want to schedule a private lesson, anything like that. We're going to talk today about music theory for the lazy guitarist. I'm starting this little series. This is going to be the first one about the fundamental laws of music, some rules that are just, innate to the subject, and we're going to talk about how to construct a major scale from thin air. So if you've ever wanted to know what notes are in G major, well, this will be how you figure it out. E major, this is how you figure it out. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about half steps and whole steps. Each fret of your guitar is a half step away from the next fret. 2 half steps equal 1 whole step. So if you're playing on your 5th fret, and you move up to the 6th fret, you went up a half step. If you were starting on the 5th fret and you went up to the 7th fret, that would be up a whole step. A half step up from a given note makes it sharp. So we would notate that with a pound sign. A sharp is 1 half step above A. A half step down from a note would make it flat. We notate that with it's a B. Call it a B. It's a B sign. So A flat is 1 half step below A. Now, some caveats. There's nothing between E and F, and there's nothing between B and C. So there's no E sharp, there's no F flat. There's no B sharp, there's no C flat. Fundamental law of music. We could get into the why that is, but it's not important. It's kind of like asking why the sky is blue. Look, the sky is blue. We'll figure out why when you get to physics, all right? So this means that the note A sharp, 1 half step above A, is the same note as B flat, 1 half step below B. There are 2 different ways of pointing to the exact same note, which is really just a frequency. It's a sine wave, right? So remember, nothing between B and C, nothing between E and F. So if we look at our musical number line, C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, F sharp G, G sharp A sharp B, C. Nothing between E and F, nothing between B and C. And those are all a half step apart. So what's a scale? A scale is just a logical series of notes that complement each other musically. They sound good when played in a passage together. The major scale is the most elementary series of notes. All other scales are, you can really think of them as some deviation or adjustment from the major scale. You're going to sharp the 4th or flat the 7th or yada, yada, yada. We'll get to all that stuff later. But the point is, once you get the major scale down, everything flows from this. So it's very important to get it down. And it's not hard, I promise. So how do we construct the major scale? Well, the scale is made up of a pattern of whole steps and half steps. Every major scale, G major, A major, E major, C major, they all follow the exact same pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. It's kind of a pain to read it like that, so whole, half, whole, half. And you do just have to memorize that. There's no trick to it. It's just straight up memorization. So you repeat it to yourself a couple times. Whole, half, whole, half. Whole, half, whole, half. Whole, half, whole, half. Set a metronome. Whole, half, whole, half. Whole, half, whole, half. Right? Just get it down, get it down. You got to memorize it. So we're going to start by creating the C major scale, which is a major scale following that pattern which starts on the note C, which is where it gets its name. So we're going to take a look at this musical number line again. C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, F sharp G, G sharp A sharp B. So remember our pattern, whole, half, whole, half. We start at C, we go up a whole step. Anybody want to take a guess at what is a whole step up from C? Give you a second. If you guessed D, you are correct. Notice we skipped over the C sharp, that's the half step, and went to the whole step, D. Our next interval is another whole step. Take a look at that number line. Take a guess. What is another whole step? It is E. Very good. All right, this one's a little bit tricky. Our next interval is a half step. So a half step from E is, if you guessed F, you are correct. Remember, there is no E sharp. So our next interval is another whole step. Any guesses? Any guesses? Bueller. That's right, we go to G. Our next step from there is another whole step to A. And our next interval is another whole step to B. And then our last interval is a half step going right back to the start of the number line, back to C. The pattern is complete, and you have created your major scale. Major scale is comprised of the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, and it contains 0 sharps or flats. That's why we start with it. It's nice and simple. Now that you've got that down, we're going to do it again with one that's just a little bit harder. The G major scale uses the exact same whole, whole, half pattern, but it starts on the note G. Take a second, think real hard. What's a whole step up from G? Did you guess A? If you did, you are correct. G to A is a whole step. We skip over that G sharp. Our next interval is another whole step. Any guesses? Any guesses? That's right, it is B. Our next interval is a half step, but keep in mind there's nothing between B and C. So when we go a half step up from B, we go right back to the start of the number line C. Our next interval is another whole step, D. Our next interval is another, anybody, up from D to E. Now it gets tricky, right? Our next interval is another whole step from E. So where do we go? Take a second. Take a guess. Oops. If you guessed F sharp, you are correct. Notice that E to F is a half step, and F to F sharp is another half step. So if we're going a whole step, we got to go to E all the way to F sharp. Our next interval is the half step that brings us right back to G. So there you go. You just created G major. So the G major scale is comprised of the notes G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. And it contains that one sharp, F sharp. All right, that's really that simple. So the next thing is for you guys to try out by yourself. Put some comments either on the Reddit or on the YouTube. I'll be happy to help you out. You're going to try to write out F sharp major. Because if you can do this scale, you really can do any scale using this technique. Here's a reminder for the musical number line. Check it out. Leave it up there. Grab a sheet of paper. Write it out. Don't do it in your head. It's not going to stick as well as if you would just write it down. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Start right there at F sharp in the center, and let me know how it goes. Again, my name is ThatBluesyGuy. You can hit me up at thatbluesyguy@gmail.com with any questions, comments, complaints, concerns. If you need a quick little private lesson, I'll be happy to help you out. I work cheap. I work free if you're super, super, super new, because I love new players. They're so much fun. I love it. Again, hit me up on Gmail or the YouTube, or come check us out on reddit.com/r/guitar. Great little community. We'll be happy to help you out. Thank you so much.